Hello, my name is Daniel Frost and welcome to the third episode of the InRetroSpect podcast special on the work from the Santa Monica-based developer Naughty Dog. In our first episode, Chris spoke to co-founder Jason Rubin about the beginnings of the company and how Crash Bandicoot came into existence. In episode 2, Pete took a walk through the world of Jak and Daxter and discussed how those games were a transition towards the titles Naughty Dog are creating today. In this episode, I will be looking at the series where Naughty Dog, arguably for the first time, took its place as one of the leading and most exciting developers in modern gaming. I will be exploring the world of Nathan Drake and Uncharted. All this in episode 3 of Naughty Dog, in retrospect. When this podcast special was first proposed, I was eager to get the chance to talk about the Uncharted series. However, when I came to putting this show together and brainstorming ideas, I strangely found it quite difficult to think of what I could talk about. In our previous InRetroSpect specials, we discussed in length the methods and merits of treasure hunting and exploration in the Tomb Raider series. Similarly, in our most recent special InRetroSpect, we looked specifically at the cinematic influences found in Rockstar's back catalogue of games. So when it came to discussing Uncharted, like Naughty Dog themselves, I didn't want to retread over old ground, and so I found myself having to rule out focusing on what I felt were two key aspects of this series: exploration and its cinematic roots. So what would I discuss? I decided before I got too bogged down with attempting to come up with a topic, I would simply go back to the source and play through the entire trilogy again. As soon as I started playing, almost immediately it jumped out at me and I knew exactly what this show would be about. I see the Uncharted series as a graduation. Looking back on their previous work, to me, these seem to be the games that the Santa Monica developer had always wanted to be making. Jason Rubin said as much in his interview with Chris in episode 1. It was the type of game that they had talked about making all those years ago. For me, Uncharted was the coming of age of Naughty Dog. The original PlayStation had Crash Bandicoot, the PS2 had Jak and Daxter, the PS3 has Uncharted, and now The Last of Us. Naughty Dog has seemingly become the go-to developer for Sony, not to create a marketing mascot and not only to produce interesting games, but to create games and characters which seem to define the console they represent. The original PlayStation was marketed as being the first chance to have a 3D arcade experience in the home. Crash Bandicoot personifies that idea. Similarly, Jak and Daxter are fun, exciting characters, but with depth and ideas beyond simply the visual design. Again, this correlated excellently with its home console. The PS2 was a sign that games were evolving and growing as a medium. And then came the PS3. There was no doubting what this console represented. This was an extremely sophisticated piece of technology which represented the modern gamer. The PS3 made a statement through both its technological specifications and its design, both in hardware and user interface. This was a console with an adult demographic in mind, and as such they approached Naughty Dog to supply this new console with its signature game and character, just as it had done twice before. In doing this, Nathan Drake was born.
Can you hear me in there?
Loud and clear, jackass.
I don't fumble, I improvise.
Oh, is that what you call it?
Yeah, I'm adaptable.
Adaptable?
We either rescue him, or we beat the crap out of him. Hell, I might just beat the crap out of him anyway.
Seems like I am always saving your ass.
Well, it is an ass worth saving.
Aló,
Buka Pintu!
si allí, ya se cara.
Cielalo! Chepatan Buka Pintu! Ah, ahí! It worked! There he is! Up there! Get on the gun! Oh boy.
When you consider the character of Drake, you can't help but see that the typical Hollywood action hero has played a huge role in his creation. Nathan Drake is cut from the same piece of cloth as iconic screen heroes such as John McClane and, of course, Indiana Jones. The quick-firing, wisecracking, sometimes bumbling leading man has been a staple figure in film for many years, but in recent times that role has been more suited to the smaller screened world of interactive entertainment than the big screen of cinema. One could argue that the rise of Nathan Drake signifies the rise of gaming as a popular medium against the more established world of film. Whilst film today has struggled to recreate these original iconic personalities, which have always been so incredibly popular, the gaming industry has been built on them, with one of the strongest being Nathan Drake. It would be very simple to say that the reason that Nathan Drake and the Uncharted series is so popular is that it utilises these key cultural icons, the most common being Indiana Jones. However, to make this argument, I feel would be a disservice to the work which has gone into creating this character, and even more so, the relationships with those around him. The character of Drake is the heart of this series, and the reason you care about this character is largely based on his interaction with key individuals. The most important of these is Victor Sullivan.
I can't leave you alone for a minute, can I?
A little gratitude would be nice. I did just save your ass back there.
Sully!
I really can't leave you alone for a minute.
Oh man, am I glad to see you.
How you doing, kid?
I'm doing just great.
So, had to grease a few palms. Did go through the rest of your money. And a good chunk of my own, but hey.
Jesus, you stink.
Yeah, not half as bad as that cigar.
The character of Sully allows us to see much more of Drake beneath his exterior bravado. Through Sully, we understand what drives Drake, we see his strengths and we appreciate where his weaknesses lie, while still acknowledging the rich history between the pair. To all intents and purposes, the character of Sully represents companionship in every form. He assists us on the battlefield. He offers guidance to both the character and to us, the player. And as is explored in Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, he also provides a paternal figure to Drake. Through this relationship, Naughty Dog is demonstrating ideas and concepts which even today in many areas of the industry other developers are simply not able to explore. This is what makes Drake such an important character. This is not simply a cipher which you navigate around a virtual world. He exists in this world in a very real sense, and his relationships define who he is more so than any catchphrase, item of clothing or special move. This is no standard protagonist, and this was the huge step that Naughty Dog took. In order to create these relationships and interesting characters, Naughty Dog placed the story and narrative front and centre with Uncharted. Whilst narrative obviously played an important role in their previous work, here Naughty Dog took a giant step forward in the standard of writing in terms of building a narrative. They saw their role not just as a developer in charge of creating plot points to enable the player to move from point A to point B. Naughty Dog took on the role of a storyteller, finding innovative ways to both engross and entertain their audience. There are a number of excellent examples of this throughout the series, such as when you take control of Drake as a young boy. This provides you with important backstory whilst never taking you out of the game. The goal was to enable the story to be told through the gameplay rather than predetermined cutscenes, which in their creation to an extent pulls the player out of the experience. This was the technique which would be advanced further in their next title, The Last of Us. I feel there are two examples of storytelling which epitomise the ability of the team to connect with its audience, and I want to discuss them a little further. These segments are completely contrasting elements and create very different reactions in the player. The first I wanted to look at is a narrative device used at the beginning of the second title, Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. As the game opens, you are faced with an incredible set piece. Drake is found severely injured in what turns out to be a train carriage hanging vertically over a cliff. To say this is a spectacular and incredible opening to a game would be an understatement. But the reason this for me is important is that once you have finished this tutorial sequence, you are then taken to a time before the events on the train. As a result, you then play through more than half of the game building up to this climactic moment where the train crashes. This is a familiar narrative device utilised in other mediums, but in doing this here, Naughty Dog accomplishes two things. Firstly, it means the first half of the game has the overall feeling of impending doom, as no matter how well things are going, you are fully aware of what is to come. When you arrive at that train yard and you see Chloe being placed on that train, you want the character to turn away, but you know what he must do, and you know this will not end well. As the player, you are propelled forward and must prepare yourself for what is to come. As well as this sense of impending doom, when you then replay the original section again for the second time, because you now have a greater sense of what has brought Drake here, the battles he has fought, the betrayals he has experienced, you are so much more involved that the hurt now feels more painful and raw, the emotion stronger. And when Drake, whilst hanging one-handed over a chasm, says, "It would be easier if I just let go." This is no longer just a throwaway comment, it is deeper than that. Here we are experiencing the same level again, but with a completely different emotional engagement. The fact that I can talk about what is essentially just a video game level in such depth illustrates the subtlety and intricacy of Naughty Dog's work. The second narrative moment I want to discuss is simply a single throwaway line of dialogue from Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. The most consistent element of the Uncharted series has always been Drake himself. We understand Drake, we know what drives him, it is a sense of destiny. As a descendant of legendary explorer Sir Francis Drake, Nate feels he would always follow in those footsteps. His most prized possessions are Sir Francis Drake's ring and diary. These are facts and are the basis of the entire series. Which brings me to this tiny moment.
Skip the mind games. You don't know me.
In fact, I suspect I know you better than anyone, Mr. Drake. Of course, that's not your real name, is it? But we won't dwell on that.
To have Marlowe say this rocks everything we know about the character. If he is not Drake's descendant and has lied about his name to everyone, even his closest ally Sully, then who is he? We now feel like we may not know this character. If it's not destiny which drives him, what is it? And what else should we question about him? How much of this character is a disguise? And as a result, we must ask, what is he hiding? In many other games or films, chances are the player or audience would reject such a fundamental questioning of an established character. Imagine if in the most recent Indiana Jones film it had been revealed that Indiana Jones was not quite as heroic as we had all been led to believe. However, in this instance, based on the subtlety of the build-up, and strangely, the reluctance to focus on this line, we are left with such ambiguity that, rather than be pushed away from Drake, we are drawn in, and are more fascinated in the character than we have ever been before. is examples like this that show how far Naughty Dog have come with their games, and especially the genre of the third-person action-adventure. So often now a game in this genre suffers purely because it's not, in inverted commas, Uncharted. And the confidence this has given the Naughty Dog team has allowed them to look at different concepts beyond gameplay mechanics. They are now able to explore moral and philosophical ideas. In the second game, Among Thieves, the chief antagonist is a war criminal known as Lazarevich. We are told of the terrible atrocities he has committed. However, up until the final climax, we only ever see him kill the one person. As the final battle draws to a close, Lazarevich says something which makes us, the player, question how we play video games.
Lazarevich!
You think I am a monster? But you're no different from me, Drake. How many men have you killed? How many just today? That's it, boy. No compassion, no mercy. Do it!
We have been made to believe that this man is a despicable human being, and yet when he compares himself to us and asks, how many people have we killed? We must consider this. What actually makes us different to the enemy? Why, when we are in control of a protagonist, it can be acceptable to commit mass murder? In an average battle sequence, you may be required to kill up to 10, 15, even perhaps 20 men. And yet we morally place our protagonist above a man who, in the context of the game at least, has ended only one life. As I said before, that you can have a serious conversation about morals and ethical integrity about this just shows how far modern gaming has come, and for me, Naughty Dog has been at the forefront of pushing this medium into daring and exciting new territories. The Uncharted series stands as a high watermark of modern interactive entertainment, with some of the most iconic, spectacular and affecting moments in all of gaming. If I were to simply say the hotel, the plane crash, or the Rub' Khali desert, you will know exactly the moment I am talking about and the sense of awe on experiencing it for the first time. Even though many see this developer as already having reached the pinnacle of games development, it is clear even now that they have not lost their desire to innovate, to excite, and to entertain its audience. In the interview with Jason Rubin, he said that, to him, even though he wasn't involved, the Uncharted series seemed to be a culmination of everything that the team had wished to create at the beginning, and now with this series, these ambitions are finally being realised.
All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night, in the dusty recesses of their minds, wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. This I did.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard or want to share your own opinion, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher.com and follow us on Twitter at InRetroSpect. I'll see you again in episode 5, the final group special episode of Naughty Dog in Retrospect. Goodbye.
Coming up next week on Naughty Dog in Retrospect, Sam looks past the cinematic and narrative achievements of The Last of Us to see the true heart of the game that lies within.
We won't get another shot at this.
Man, that was close.
What on earth do the Fireflies want with you?
I knew you had heart. You know, it's okay to give up.
At least they're predictable. To the
normal people that scare me.
That's all to come next time on Naughty Dog in Retrospect.